none of these devices, I mean, have you ever tried to use the voice assistant on your phone? I mean, half the time it doesn't recognize your voice or doesn't process your question correctly. So I'm not going to get into like spending $500 on a new smart speaker if it only sits in one spot of my house and it doesn't even really work that well.
Well, my gripe would be that like I have no idea who's recording my conversation and my speech, and I have no idea what kind of data Google's collecting.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
at least Jarvis, Tony Stark knows that he controls Jarvis. He built Jarvis, and Jarvis is not going to share information with anyone but Tony Stark. God knows what Google's up to, right?
Although it didn't Jarvis end up turning into Vision in the movies? So now now Vision is like dating Scarlet Witch. So there's like theoretically Scarlet Witch could know all of Tony Stark's deepest, darkest secrets.
Well, true, I guess. But what does Vision not know? There's our cold open.
Yeah. So let's start the show.
Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Extra Buttery Podcast, our first episode of 2018. Happy New Year. We're excited to get back into the grind of bringing salty, snackable episodes to you over the course of this coming year, talking about everything from movies to television, maybe even some video games, anything else that kind of gets swept up along the way. But for this episode, being the first one for the new year, we want to take a look back at the year that was and kind of go over some of the highlights and the lowlights of the movies that we saw over the past year, and then look a little bit into the future for 2018, especially the coming Oscar race. The nominations will be coming out pretty soon, so we'll be diving into that once we get through our little retrospective. But coming to you from Toronto, my name is Robert Snow, and joining me from Vancouver is my co-host Jason Chen. How's it going?
Not bad. You?
Just not bad?
Yeah, it's a Monday. How great can a Monday be?
I don't know. I spent a lot of the weekend playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, so my brain.
Lucky you.
Yeah,
but it's Monday. It ended. You can't play anymore. It must be sad.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm so obsessed with the game now. I'm thinking of, because I was playing it on my brother's Nintendo Switch console. So now I'm sort of thinking I need to get one of my own.
Those things have been selling like hotcakes. I thought they would do well, but it's like, it surprised me how well it's done. But this again goes to show that your console is only as good as your library.
Yes, and there's actually not a lot of games out for the Switch right now.
Yeah, but isn't that supposed to change soon?
I mean, I guess they every so often they'll do like an announcement video where they'll talk about titles that are coming up, but it's not like there's this giant selection like there is for PlayStation or Xbox.
No, but at the same time, both of those consoles have some like really, truly awful games.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that like for those consoles, the developers kind of they kind of just shovel stuff out in an effort to make a quick buck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but let's talk about 2017 in the movies.
Yes, let's do that.
So it's a pretty big topic. I mean, I think over the course of the year, I watched a little over 60 movies in theaters, which is
holy cow.
Which isn't even a lot by like the standards of most pro critics, but.
Yeah, but they get those for free.
Exactly.
We don't. We gotta pay for these.
Yeah, I've been thinking of actually asking my tax person whether I can claim it as a business expense. I'll get back to you on that.
I think if your website makes money, you can, but we don't have any ads.
No, true.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, come on now, sponsors. We're all ears.
No, screw it. Screw sponsors. We're gonna do this for free for the people.
How liberal of you. Before we go into like the summer, there was a few like really, really strong things that came out in February, March, April of 2017. I'm seeing here like The Big Sick from Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon. This very touching sort of romantic comedy drama, telling the real life story of comedian Kumail Nanjiani and how he met his future wife, but then got sort of drawn into this very scary medical situation that she ran into this mysterious disease that left her basically in a coma, and his decision to sort of wait it out and wait by her bedside while she was in the hospital, even though he barely knew her, and her parents were more than a little suspicious of him. So he kind of dramatized this whole thing and stars as himself in the movie. And it's probably I mean, just because there was a lot of really, really good things that came out last year, I can't put it super high on my like top 20 of the list, or top 20 list for 2017, but it's definitely got a place there.
I don't know if I can do a top 20 list for 2017. There's been a lot of good movies, but I'd have to pare it down. Yeah, I'd have to pare it down to like make it a top
it's pretty
10,
tough.
so it's easier. Because there are a lot of movies in probably that 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 range that could flip-flop at any time.
Oh, yeah. And that's sort of where The Big Sick is for me. Like, I really enjoyed it, but it's kind of jostling for position with a lot of movies in that lower end of the top 20.
Right. So another film that's kind of in the lower end of the top 20 for me was Logan.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This was the James Mangold film who did 3:10 to Yuma. And it's Hugh Jackman's last turn as the iconic Wolverine for Marvel. It's not part of the MCU. It was actually a joint venture because Fox holds the rights to X-Men. But I always thought this was probably the Wolverine a lot of comic book fans were hoping for. This was the R-rated, hyper slashy, bloody, gory Wolverine that a lot of comic book people have been clamoring for. I thought it was a really, really great film. It was very different from all your traditional superhero films. I thought Daphne Keane was incredible as the girl, and really the crux of the story, where she's like this orphaned mutant who is experimented on, and she pleads and begs Logan and Professor X to help her escape to the North. Incidentally, where all the people go when there's some sort of like apocalypse or like life-threatening danger.
Woo, Canada.
Yeah, it's like Canada or North Dakota or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think they there was a few like kind of vague references to the border, and I wasn't sure if they meant the state border or the national border. But
right.
Hey, I mean, if we're seen as a haven for oppressed mutants, then I guess that's pretty cool.
Or just oppressed people nowadays, eh?
Ooh, zing.
No, I just thought going back to this film, it was incredibly well shot. It was a long sort of plotting drama at some points, but
yes, it was long in points.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it borrowed a little bit of that from the Western genre.
Yeah, 3:10 to Yuma.
Yeah.
It had a very 3:10 to Yuma feel, because if you remember 3:10 to Yuma, Russell Crowe was kind of like this anti-hero.
Yeah,
and Christian Bale was like the hero, but he had made decisions in the past that kind of haunt him. So he was kind of trying to redeem himself. And it's kind of the same story here with Logan and Wolverine, who's like the last surviving X-Men.
Yeah.
But I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I kind of at the beginning of the year thought this would be a awards front runner. But now that we've had like the run up late in the year with all the award bait films, this is getting pushed down, but it's definitely still in my top 20.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think Logan is a great example of what I think is one of my favorite approaches for superhero movies, is to bind it to a pre-existing genre or subgenre, something that's not superhero. So in the case of
Right.
Logan, it's a Western. In the case of like, even though I liked it far less than Logan, something like Captain America, the Winter Soldier borrows a lot from the kind of political thriller subgenre. And it's still not done very often, but I think when they can make those references or those connections really overt, it really raises up the material a lot. And it for me, it just makes it a lot more interesting than I don't know, one of these typical installments that kind of presupposes that the superhero stakes and the save the world stuff is paramount, and you should really, really care about, the latest cackling villain who wants to blow up the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to talk a little bit about Get Out, because that's definitely making its way onto out of the top 20 and into the top 10 for a lot of people. There's even some talk that the star Daniel Kaluuya, if that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, he was in Black Mirror, eh?
Yeah, he was in an episode of Black Mirror. Was it 20 million credits or or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was like 15 million or something
15 million
like that.
credits, yeah.
Yeah,
A pretty
it was a deeply disturbing episode.
Yeah, a pretty disturbing one. It can be a bit of a deal breaker for some viewers. But no, I think what he showed in that Black Mirror episode, and certainly in Get Out, is that he's a person to watch. And Jordan Peele I'd be surprised if he doesn't get some sort of nod for Best Director for this, even though it's his directorial debut, essentially. I don't know, it's coming out in a year. It's riding a lot of political advantage. There's a lot of discussion about racial politics in the news, and it came out at a very good time for it to kind of grab a lot of the conversation. So, and all of that aside, it's just a really satisfying movie.
The only thing, the one thing that kind of works against Get Out is that it's not a genre that's typically loved by critics or critic awards. It's a horror, black comedy, thriller, like it's kind of genre bending. And in the past, other than I'd say The Exorcist, like other than a couple of instances like that, horror and comedy films don't get much love at the awards. Unless they're in their own category.
It's one of those movies that wins over the critics but can't win over a voting body.
Yeah, essentially, because the voting body is like old and farts. Yeah. Old farts.
Despite all their many attempts to add new people to the ranks.
Well, I mean, it's getting better, but we'll see how much it improves things.
Yeah. Another standout from that kind of block in the March to April section of 2017. I don't think you got a chance to see this yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but A Ghost Story from David Lowery.
Right. Yes, I really wanted to see this, but I couldn't get tickets.
Yeah, it's actually on Netflix Canada right now. If you want to catch up with it. Even though it does star Casey Affleck, which, can rub some people the wrong way right out of the gate. They may just refuse to see it on those grounds alone.
He's an excellent actor, all sexual accusations and being a scumbag aside. He's a really good actor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he certainly got the goods in that department, but and I don't know if it makes things better, but I mean, he does spend the vast majority of the movie hidden under a white sheet. So, but in case you're listening to this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's a really tiny movie that David Lowery, who directed Ain't Them Body Saints, and he was actually hired to do the Disney remake of Pete's Dragon this past year. He wanted to do something like a passion project, something that he could just kind of go out and do quickly with a small crew, and he came up with this idea of A Ghost Story, which is just about an unnamed man and woman who move into a new house together, and the man not long afterwards is killed in a freak car accident. And he comes back as this very traditional, Halloween style sheeted ghost, and he's haunting the house that he and his wife were going to move into. And as he watches in this kind of silent observation sort of mode, he sees new people come into his wife's life. He sees her move out. He sees new people move into the house. He eventually sees the house torn down and big, tall, modernist skyscrapers put up in its place, and he's kind of stuck in this position. And if you're in the right headspace when you see the movie, it can be really powerful, really profound. But at the same time, there are certain odd moments in it that may actually just make you laugh out loud because you're really not sure how to process it. It's unlike anything else I saw this year. So, I mean, I think it deserves a shout out for that reason.
Fair enough. I've always wanted to see it. The one movie I also want to touch on, this strangely got a January release, but it was Kong, Skull Island.
A January release? I thought that was like April or May.
Oh, sorry, February release. It was February.
February 28th.
Release.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know a lot of people was kind of lukewarm about this film, and I didn't go in with much expectations, but much like Pacific Rim, I went into the film to see King Kong bust some skulls. And I saw King Kong bust some skulls.
That he did.
So in that sense, I thought it delivered. And it's not in my top 20, but I just wanted to point out that it's a very, I think, entertaining film. If it's on TV, I could just stop and watch it. Yeah,
I think I would agree with that. I mean, again, it did sort of come from nowhere. The director, Jordan Vogt Roberts, he sort of came out of the gate. I think his only previous credit before this was a little indie flick. So for him to be handed this massive budget studio film, part of the broader Godzilla universe that Legendary Pictures is trying to put together, that was a pretty big responsibility for a guy who's just starting out. But they handed him this big cast, and he really, it's as you said, it's definitely not going to win any awards, but it's entertaining for what it is. And I loved John C. Reilly's performance in it.
Yes, John C. Reilly was excellent. Didn't the director get in some trouble because he was tweeting out at some haters?
No, he was angry about the CinemaSins take on his video, or on his movie.
Right. Anyway, the guy was a little sensitive. He
was, yeah. I mean, he kind of, he started up by, he went on this big long tirade, and he didn't quite seem to get the joke of the whole CinemaSins YouTube channel, and his tweets then kind of set off a bit of a firestorm about how, a certain section of film Twitter also hates CinemaSins and feels that they're like a blight on film criticism. So,
yeah,
that did dominate the discussion for a little while, and then we all promptly forgot about it.
Yeah. March 11th, Baby Driver.
Baby Driver, yes. I know I really like this one. You were a little bit more lukewarm on it, though.
Yeah, it's a fine movie. I just didn't love it as much as you did, though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an Edgar Wright fanboy for sure. Something about the way he puts those pictures together, just purely on an editing basis.
Yes, his editing is very interesting. I will give him that.
Yeah, and Baby Driver was just more of the same. Like, he's taking a genre that, admittedly, some people could say has been done to death. It's the heist genre. It's got a young protagonist who's trying to get clear of his crime affiliations. It's got a lot of charismatic career criminals in it.
I thought Lily James really stole the show in this one too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too, actually. She's been doing a lot of smaller parts in like British costume dramas and stuff, but
yeah, she's that type.
Yeah, but she came out here and she showed that she can at least do a southern accent, so we know that she can play more characters like that.
It's just like she took this like pretty cliched role of like the diner girl.
Yeah.
And I think really made it interesting. I thought she was a very compelling character because she's kind of like the driving force behind Ansel Elgort's character.
Yeah.
And her name itself, like the meaning behind having her in the story is quite pervasive. She's a big reason why he does the things he does.
Yeah. I mean, I bought their relationship, which is, you can't always say about movies like this. And, Edgar Wright has talked about maybe doing a sequel, which would be...
How do you feel about that?
My preference would be just to leave it as is and just keep it as that singular film. And I don't think... Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Edgar Wright has ever done a direct sequel to any of his movies so far. So that would be kind of new territory for him.
But he does have shared universes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy is, of course, a shared universe in the sense that like they're all lampooning particular movie genres. But I don't know. I mean, I think there would be a lot of potential pitfalls in a sequel to this because this initial story is very well contained, and he would have to come up with a pretty compelling reason why Baby got back into the whole heist wheelman kind of game after, spoilers, but he is locked up at the end of Baby Driver. It's not like he gets away scot-free. He spends a stretch of time, like a number of years, in prison for his activities, and then he meets up with Lily James' character when he gets out. So to kind of make a whole nother movie where he obviously hasn't learned his lesson, or back to square one, it might feel a little bit forced.
Yeah, my two gripes are that the part where people are praising about the music and how it's cut to the action on the screen, I feel like he's definitely not the first one to do it. I think he did a great job. I think that's just part of the film's charm. I wouldn't give him bonus marks for that. The other thing is with Edgar Wright, this film in particular was a little too kinetic for me. Just personally, I wish it had more quiet moments. For those who haven't seen the movie, Ansel Elgort lives with this old man who's mute. and they have the
Yeah, it's sort of like his foster father.
yeah, his foster father, and they kind of have a few nice, quiet moments together. And I wish we had more of those because that end sequence, the final fight sequence with John Hamm, really made me just want to walk out and be like, okay, can we just skip the next 5 minutes, please?
Yeah, in the sense that you sort of knew that John Hamm's character was going to meet a grisly end, and you were already kind of thinking ahead.
Yeah, it just went on too long. It didn't have to be like that. It's like in Jason Bourne, where like the spy that's trying to kill Jason Bourne should have been dead like 5 scenes ago, but somehow continues.
Yeah. Wait, which Jason Bourne are you talking about?
Was it in between the second and third one?
Like Joan Allen's character, Pamela Landy?
No. Carl Urban. It took him a long time to die.
Yeah, sort of.
There's like a car. He got shot. There's a car chase.
Yeah, that
even Jason Bourne himself. Like, if you read the books, it's ridiculous. In the film, it's a little better. But he gets shot at. He gets like vicious car accidents. He should have had like whiplash like 50 times.
Well, yeah, but that's don't bust up the don't burst our bubbles too badly now.
No, I'm not. Baby Driver is a good film, just not quite. I didn't quite like it as much as you did.
Yeah, fair enough.
The same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, but vice versa. I think I liked it more than most people, although I have to concede the first one was better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The second one was more of the first and just a tad longer, and I think it wasn't as original and fun as the first one, which is, I mean, kind of hard to do because it was the first movie.
Yeah, it would be. It was a very hard movie to follow. I'll give it that. And
yes,
you know how in the first one where they kind of poked fun at Lee Pace's villain character Ronan, and kind of, especially in the very end sequence, they said he's about to start his whole I'm going to destroy everything and bring my wrath, and then they just cut him off and do a dance off scene. I mean, incidentally, that's one of my favorite scenes from the entire movie, but it's almost like they kind of went back on that idea in Volume 2 because it
took itself too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in a villain who, again, is going to destroy everything with his evil blue goo that's taking over entire planets. And, as charismatic as Kurt Russell was in the role, he still didn't inspire a whole lot of fear. Yeah, it definitely, I can't call it worse than the first one. It's just kind of more of the same. Like, it doesn't hit as many high notes.
And because it's a sequel, by virtue of being the same, it's worse, right?
It's complicated in that way, but yeah, it's it's slightly fewer memorable scenes, that kind of thing. But one thing I will say though that I did like about it, that not everyone kind of pointed out, was how the movie decided to split up the characters essentially into pairs and play them off of each other, so that you had like Star-Lord playing off of his father, and you had Gamora playing off of Nebula, Rocket playing off of Yondu, and they were kind of teasing out interesting character relationships with pairings that you may not totally expect. From a writing perspective, it was kind of interesting.
What's next? Wonder Woman came up before that.
Oh yeah, did we skip Wonder Woman? Oh my god.
Yeah, we skipped Wonder Woman.
Oh no, they all sort of came out around the same time. Like it was a pretty hot spring and summer.
Well, let's do Wonder Woman because there's gonna be more like closer to the end of the year.
Yeah. Wonder Woman. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed Wonder Woman. It was kind of invigorating to see a DC movie that was actually legitimately working and hitting a lot of those kind of emotional moments that you want from this universe. But at the same time, as a piece of filmmaking, maybe it's not going to stand the test of time, especially if we get more movies like Wonder Woman. And by that, I mean more movies directed by women and with female superheroes as the lead characters, which is something we arguably need to see a whole lot more of, Wonder Woman being the first one. So
yeah, I thought it was a good film. I thought it was much better the second time I watched it. But at the end of the day, it's a very well done origin story, and that's all it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not, I can't really call it award worthy, especially not not in comparison with a lot of the other stuff that it's up against this year. But yeah, I mean, it's compared to the narrative chaos of the other movies that in the same series, like Batman v Superman and even Justice League to an extent. This had a strong beginning, middle, and end, and it had a couple of pretty rousing moments, especially the fight scenes in and around No Man's Land and the battlefields.
Yeah, the No Man's Land scene I thought was fantastic. The plot could have been a little tighter, but I'm not going to give it negative points for that because I think the focus was always more on the characters themselves.
And like Chris Pine was legitimately fun as Steve Trevor. Like, I wasn't sure what kind of material they would give him to work with from the outset.
Right.
His chemistry with Gal Gadot was really strong. The villain was left a little bit to be desired. You know, it would have been nice to get.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up too. David Thewlis, what a waste.
I mean, I almost would have preferred it if he didn't transform into this big Greek god thing with like armor and superpowers at the end. Like if he just stayed in his human form, it almost would have been creepier like that. Because it ended up in a kind of a classic kind of big explodey showdown thing. And that being said, when she charges up her bracelets and like blasts him with a lightning bolt, that was a pretty good sequence.
Yeah. Speaking of a movie that had some pretty good sequences, was also another superhero, Spider-Man: Homecoming, which really surprised me how good it was.
Now you're going really fast now.
It's June.
We've got to. Okay, so real quick, because we're skipping over a few of my favorites.
We don't have to go in order.
Atomic Blonde was great. I liked it a lot.
That was an August release, man.
Well, okay, my list is more out of whack than I thought it was then. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword.
Oh yeah, you saw that. Would you really recommend this though?
No, definitely not. This list is not about recommendations. In case you were curious.
Okay, all right. I thought we were kind of skipping over the ones that we didn't like.
I mean, yes, except when we didn't like them enough to the point that people need to be warned against them. Because
like the Mummy.
Yeah, and because I know you fell asleep during the Mummy, but. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword was like, it really wanted to be like a superhero movie set in the time of King Arthur and the Round Table. It even imagined like what would it look like if Excalibur turned King Arthur into the Flash and like gave him super speed. But it was phenomenally silly. And
but silly good or silly bad? I
mean, if you were drunk, you could probably get a laugh out of it. Like drunk or maybe a little bit high or something, you could probably get a little bit of fun out of it. It definitely wouldn't depress you, but it is really, really silly. And then sitting right next to it on my list is something that you probably wouldn't enjoy no matter how intoxicated you were. And that's The Circle with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks. They came out around about the same time, but The Circle was just dreadful. It was needlessly alarmist about our tech future. It feels like the kind of movie that we'll look back on in maybe even as soon as like 2 years from now and see it as being like hopelessly out of date.
It was still a pretty big summer for Emma Watson, though, because she had Beauty and the Beast earlier in the year.
Yeah, and that made a lot of money, right?
Did you see Beauty and the Beast?
No.
Oh,
but I hear it was excellent, or at least
it's not
as good. What? No,
it's not.
Oh,
it's almost a shot-by-shot remake of the cartoon.
Oh, okay.
Except I thought the cartoon characters had more charm. The production value is very high. Like I can't deny that. Like with any Disney movie, but next to each other, I'd 100% prefer the cartoon.
Okay.
Even the songs were the same.
Well, yeah, but wasn't that the intention? Like they just wanted a live action version of the cartoon that everyone loved?
Well, just freaking go see a stage play. But no, for that reason, I like, you know me, like I really prize originality in films. So anytime there's like a shot for shot remake, I'm automatically not impressed. Because I feel like you're just not putting enough thought into this. You're not really trying to make it your own film.
Well, you guess on that score, then she might have had a big year financially, Emma Watson, that is. But
Charlie Hunnam was supposed to have a big year too.
I mean, he was good in Lost City of Z.
Right. But I think that played more to his like actual personality, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. But also, like, nobody saw it. Like it barely had any kind of release.
Yeah, why is that?
I really don't know. I don't know if it was.
It should have had a bigger release because I think it had a really compelling story.
I mean, if it had. I think the studio is a little bit stuck because they probably knew that it wasn't strong enough to compete in like a awards kind of environment. Because it is, even though it is really strong, it's not maybe flashy or it doesn't have enough of a hot button issue to kind of distinguish it, even though it is like the execution of it is really, really good. It would have a hard time standing out in that company. And then, so they ended up releasing it sort of midway through the year, round about the time when like everyone's more distracted with big studio blockbuster type fare. So it kind of got lost.
All right, what's up next?
Alien Covenant.
Alien Covenant was disappointing because it had run its course. By the time that franchise came out, there was really no need for another film. What made it even worse was that even though Ridley Scott has spent so much time and thought and care into like creating this alien world, like the story itself was so spectacularly boring.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, and this is coming from somebody. I've never seen Aliens 1 through 3. Don't ask me how that happened. I know you're still horrified, but.
Yeah, if you could only see my face right now, my jaw is like on the floor, my eyes are rolling out of my head.
So yeah, I mean, I'm still like an Alien newbie. I saw Prometheus, and I was told that for people who enjoyed Prometheus, Covenant would be satisfying to watch because it continued all of those strands. But
in that sense, a little bit, but wasn't it redeeming enough?
But for me, like, I mean, I can't get into the kind of mindless slasher stuff that the Alien movies always devolve into. I mean, maybe Scott did it really well in the first one, and maybe James Cameron kind of did the perfect follow-up in the second one. But for my money, like, the current Alien movies are just a lot of really, really detailed production design, like very, very impressive sci-fi worlds with like these great approaching shots as the spaceship comes in, and the landscapes and the crazy destroyed civilizations and stuff. Like all of that is really fun to look at.
And it gets killed also because its characters are so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between like yelling at the screen and wishing the characters were smarter and just being kind of disappointed that they just made such an easy prey for the monsters. Like, I mean, you don't want to feel so much smarter than the characters that it kind of defeats the purpose to see the movie.
Or you're like half screaming in your head, don't go to that place, or don't do that.
Yeah. Like,
where it's like blatantly obvious what's going to happen.
Yeah, like you've got characters in this movie who, especially when they all take refuge in that engineer city, and this is where pretty much most of the killing happens. But, they've already survived a disaster where their shuttle blew up and they had a couple of their crew be brutally murdered in front of them. But then they just kind of go about their business inside this building, even though they know that there's like a maybe murderous android who's their only like contact, and the aliens that were killing their friends before are still out there, but yet they're kind of having fun washing their face in a sink or poking around in evil looking eggs. And it just Billy Crudup dies. I forget the one who gets decapitated in the sink scene, but yeah, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, a total missed opportunity. But the franchise is in flux now because Disney just bought the rights to everything, right?
True. Although Scott has, he says that he wants to make sequels out of everything now, so.
He's going to direct till he's dead.
Yeah. He's like.
Which I appreciate. I love the guy. I think he's still one of the best working in the industry today, and his films are still interesting even when they're not great.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few guys working who have that level. Like, it's like basically him and Clint Eastwood who keep up that kind of pace.
Yeah.
A couple more shout outs from the summer. Spider-Man Homecoming for sure. That was a July release. I enjoyed this one a lot. It's a lot of fun to see Marvel kind of operating at what might be like the best of their output, and that was true like twice this year between Spider-Man Homecoming and Thor Ragnarok.
I did find Homecoming a little long.
Yeah.
But I thought Tom Holland was a great Spider-Man, and I think they had a very interesting way of integrating him into the universe, but also making sure that he had his own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you watch like the promos, I think you and I were both like, man, is Iron Man going to be like a major character in this? But he's not. I mean, he's there in certain key points, but it's really Spider-Man's story, which I really appreciated. And I also appreciated that they really mixed things up, that they took the comic book lore and kind of threw some of it out the window and kind of made their own twist on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think the other thing too is that they had really moments of levity, especially with, is it Jose Lobaton, like his friend?
Oh, his best friend character.
What's his name? Shit. Anyway, I thought the supporting cast was great. I thought Michael Keaton was a good villain as well.
Oh yeah, and they would like kind of. I think I made this a fixture of my review on the site. Was it's hard to adequately describe how satisfying it is to get a villain like the one that Michael Keaton plays in this, a guy who doesn't have any grand ambitions about taking over the world, about destroying a bunch of stuff. You know, he's just a kind of a very much a blue collar, down to earth kind of guy who has very simple things that he wants. He just wants to provide for his family in a uncertain time, I guess.
And the reveal too, right?
Yeah,
with the twist near the end of the movie, that was awesome. I didn't expect that at all. You know,
and there's something that they might have spoiled a lot earlier if they had been less careful. But yeah, it hits at just the right point. It was very strong on all those levels. And it seems like Tom Holland is going to be one of the guys who's going to help kind of carry this whole massive behemoth that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe into its next phase. So that's pretty cool to see a young guy like him get that kind of responsibility.
There was another summer blockbuster that I wanted to talk about, and that was War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yes, yeah.
So I have to say that I don't remember much of the first one. The first one was surprisingly good because I don't think a lot of people had expected much from it, partly because people are still kind of like a little unsure after the Mark Wahlberg remake with Tim Burton directing. Mm-hmm. But even though I think it's the weakest film of the trilogy, I thought War of the Planet of the Apes was ultimately still very enjoyable. I thought Andy Serkis was incredible as Caesar.
Yes.
I think Woody Harrelson was fantastic as a villain. There's certain things I didn't like in regards to the plot and how I think it kind of meanders for a little bit, but the cinematography was great and the CGI is great. And I thought the storytelling, which is like the strength of this franchise, especially in the second movie, it was still on point.
Yes. And it finally kind of acknowledged the fact that the characters that we've always liked the most in this series have been the ape characters, and the humans that have kind of been on the periphery of Caesar's story have never been quite as interesting as Caesar himself. And a lot of
Caesar's incredible. What an incredible character.
And a lot of the credit there goes to Serkis. It's important too to describe, what Serkis is doing. I think a lot of people still use the terminology that was coined back when Serkis kind of came to our attention as Gollum in Lord of the Rings. At the time, they were doing what was called motion capture. So they were just capturing Serkis's like physical movements as the character and then doing the voice and the performance later. But now it's all done at the same time. And, for all intents and purposes, Serkis is an actor like any of the others that you would see on any other movie set. And everything he's doing all of the technology is there to help him deliver the performance as one complete unit. And I think that really comes across in these movies. Caesar does not feel like an assembly of technological stuff like so many other fully CGI characters that we see in movies nowadays. You believe that he is a character, and that's very hard to pull off.
Yes. 100% agree.
What else came out around that summer? It was a busy summer for me. Dunkirk, obviously,
Dunkirk. Okay, here's my question about Dunkirk. Now that you've seen pretty much all the Oscar frontrunners, where does Dunkirk rank for you? Is it top 5, top 10, top 15?
Oh, that's a good one. That is a really difficult question because I
had this same problem because I don't know where to rank it exactly. Technically, it's well done. It's like Christopher Nolan at his like most proficient.
Yep.
I think his story structure was very unique. I don't think we've seen a lot of films that have that 3 simultaneous storyline that kind of really meshes seamlessly. Yep. I think the performances were good, even though it was an ensemble cast, and it was like everyone was low key.
Everyone's low key. I mean, he does so much without any dialogue, you know, or even without a lot of like really brutal violence, you know. I mean, a lot of people going into a World War II movie, you know, probably conditioned in part by Saving Private Ryan and other movies in the genre. They might expect a movie like Dunkirk to have lots of like people getting their heads exploded or like being riddled with bullets, but this kind of cuts around all of that and is more about the kind of broader national experience of like what it's like to have the majority of your fighting force stranded and basically doomed.
Right. At the same time, though, if you're talking in terms of story, I thought Dunkirk was maybe the weakest. But is it good enough technically to be considered one of the best pictures of the year?
I don't know, because there's, you know, movies like, which we'll get into in a bit, the stuff like The Shape of Water.
Right. Exactly.
Blade Runner 2049, or even something like Mother from Darren Aronofsky. Like there's a lot of movies that had so much going on a technical front that it might be easy for Dunkirk to kind of fall behind again. And we're even seeing that in some of the precursor awards. Like other movies are stepping up in the technical categories that you might expect Dunkirk to perform really well in.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, well, I we'll probably get into it later, but in terms of flipping the story structure, the traditional story structure on its head, I thought Wind River was arguably more explicit and original. And I think Taylor Sheridan took a lot more risk in that screenplay, and he pulled it off, which I think in some ways is more impressive than what Christopher Nolan has done.
Yeah, and Wind River is something that I still have to see. It's
okay.
It's probably one of like 5 movies from this past year that I really, really want to see. And
it's a flawed movie. I wouldn't say it's perfect. I think it falls short of awards caliber film, but there are some interesting things in it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you would say that it outperforms Dunkirk in that very key area. So it might be yet another year where Christopher Nolan delivers like a really affecting movie that still doesn't get any love on an awards level.
I honestly don't think Dunkirk's going to win any major awards.
Yeah.
It's going to get nominated for quite a few, but it's not going to win any. It might get even shut out. It feels like one of those years, and it feels like one of those years where Chris Nolan really just misses out on everything again.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but
just tough competition.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those bad luck kind of situations. I mean, despite how much I liked it.
You're talking about Atomic Blonde?
Yeah, well, Atomic Blonde came out around the same time. Again, like I would kind of put it more in the category of something like Kong Skull Island, like we were saying before, like a movie that on a critical basis, you know, it definitely has a lot of strengths, but it doesn't really deliver a complete package. But what it is strong at, it does incredibly well. And again, if the fact that like we're seeing a movie like Atomic Blonde that has such a brutal, driving female lead in a genre that's been dominated by male leads for pretty much the whole time. Like this character that Charlize Theron plays, Lorraine Broughton, like she is just a bone-crushing, terrifying figure for the entire movie. And the creative team behind John Wick is partially involved in this, and you can see all of the technical stuff being brought to bear on it, like these just insane tracking shots, these long takes. There's this fight sequence in a staircase that just will blow your eyes out of your brain. It's so good. And like Charlize Theron was so committed to the role that she actually broke a tooth because she got like hit in the face, but because she was gritting her teeth so hard.
She's badass though,
with exertion while she was doing the fight, you know. And Atomic Blonde is like one of those movies that you can just rewatch very, very easily, and maybe even pick up partway through and just enjoy it.
This was supposed to be a big summer for Sofia Boutella too, between that and The Mummy.
Yeah, and I think she does a lot better in Atomic Blonde. I mean, it seemed like...
Yeah, of course. I don't know. There was nothing good about The Mummy. We should just not talk about it.
Oh, here's a little a lesser seen one that deserves a little bit more attention. I don't know if this will pay out for it in the awards race. Good Time from the Safdie brothers.
I didn't see that.
It's got Robert Pattinson in it. It's a sort of one of those crime movies where everything takes place all in one night. And Robert Pattinson plays this kind of dopey, desperate career criminal who ropes his brother, who suffers from a intellectual disability, into a bank robbery. And in their attempt to get away, even though it seems like they had, everything well planned out, they still managed to catch Pattinson's brother and cart him off to Rikers Prison in New York. And then Pattinson's character has to spend the rest of the movie trying to put together the cash to bail him out, because he knows that his brother's intellectual disability will mean that he's just going to be completely destroyed in prison. And it's just one of these movies where, you're almost out of breath when you're finished watching it. It's just going at this mad pace, but you really, really hate Robert Pattinson's character by the end of it, even though you're supposed to like him. But yet it's this very tangible love-hate kind of thing. And mostly because almost all the people that he runs into over the course of the evening are so much worse than him. They're just like the absolute like underbelly of society. The Safdie brothers, who have been making movies for a long time and are surprisingly well connected in the whole indie film circuit. They've been interviewed by the Criterion Collection. They pop up a lot in that kind of circle. But this is really the first movie that's come out that could be considered like close to a mainstream type of breakthrough. So I'm very curious to see what they do next. I totally recommend Good Time to anybody who can find it.
Logan Lucky,
yeah. This was just before TIFF started. New movie by Steven Soderbergh, who's been allegedly in retirement from motion pictures, at least for the number of years now, while he was working on the Cinemax show The Nick. But yeah, he comes back to feature films, and he brought again, it's sort of almost like 2017 was a heist film type of year. We had Logan Lucky, we had Good Time, we had Baby Driver,
Fast and Furious.
There was there was a lot of enterprising criminals on the screens this year.
I just like Logan Lucky because it's set in the American South. It has to do with NASCAR, which is really not exactly a topic that Hollywood has dabbled in. I think the only time the only other NASCAR movie I can remember is probably Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise.
Right.
And so I thought Channing Tatum, I think, is an underrated actor. I think he does a really good job here. Adam Driver's fantastic. Daniel Craig does a character that's kind of like wacky and weird, and he pulls it off. And Riley Keough, I've always really liked, and she does a really good job as well.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where like the director is able to get exactly the cast that he wants, and he gets a lot of great performances out of them. He's just operating at the top of his powers. So even though, I remember us talking about this on the show, back around the time Logan Lucky came out, and I think I think both of us felt that it was a little bit long in the latter 20 minutes or so. It was kind of dragging things out a little bit. If you like Steven Soderbergh, if you like any of the actors involved, this one is definitely worth seeking out. Not the least of which because it kind of underperformed at the box office compared to what I think Soderbergh even himself was hoping for. I think he had given a really interesting interview before Logan Lucky came out, essentially saying that if his financing model and the way he was able to arrange creative control for Logan Lucky, if it worked out, it could totally turn indie film financing on its head. But unfortunately, it seemed like Logan Lucky kind of underperformed, so maybe he wasn't 100% right on that.
Yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. So if you could go and see Logan Lucky, or just, I don't know, go see it sometime, support the film. It's pretty good.
So now we find ourselves into TIFF zone. And also,
did you ever see Goodbye Christopher Robin?
No. It felt like more of like a prestige kids movie for me. I mean, obviously, well made. But
that's what I felt too. But
and you were at the Vancouver Film Festival around about the same time. But there were so many great things from this year's festival. It was probably one of my favorite festivals in recent memory. Stuff like Lady Bird, obviously that one's a huge one in the current conversation, leading up to the Oscars. The Shape of Water, again, excellent. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, also very, very strong. Mother, very weird, really, really not for everybody, but definitely unlike anything else you'll ever see. So those three movies for me were the ones or those four movies rather, were the ones that were kind of top of mind. Did you get a chance to catch up? Well, you saw Lady Bird. I remember we talked about that.
Yeah. So I was actually going to point out two films at VIFF that I thought were excellent, that really are seared into my head because they made such an impression on me. One was this Thai film called Bad Genius.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, you talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a kind of like an Edgar Wright kind of flashy, kinetic film about a group of kids who are trying to take entrance exams to get into the best colleges in the world, and they all team up and hatch up with this plan to cheat off each other, and so they can get accepted in all these prestige schools. And one girl's like the ringleader, and she's making money hand over fist, and she's got this moral dilemma in front of her. And it's a very straightforward film, but it's very well done, very well shot. There's a couple twists in there that it kind of come out of nowhere, and that's great. The humor's there as well. The cast of characters, they all do a knockout job. I wish more people have seen this, and I wish more people have seen foreign films from Asia, because a lot of them are quite good. Because most people, if you ask them about Asian films, they think John Woo or Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
And there's a bigger world than that. Or God forbid, The Great Wall. My God.
Hollywood's idea of what Asian film can be.
Yeah, exactly. The other one that I hope at least gets a few more nominations down the road is The Florida Project.
Oh, yeah, from Sean Baker.
With Sean Baker, Willem Dafoe plays this motel manager that's housing some low-income people, one of which is a very young mother with a precocious daughter with her that she kind of drags along everywhere. And it's a very slice-of-life movie that is not unlike Moonlight in the sense that it's set in Florida, and it's a coming-of-age story, and it's about people who are on the fringe of the society. I really, really loved it. I thought it was hilarious. When I walked out, the reaction was a little mixed because it can be crude. We are talking about low-income people, so there's lots of crude jokes, crude language. The lifestyle may not be appetizing, and there are certain scenes that may be disturbing, but overall, I thought it was an incredible film.
Yeah, that's like I mentioned before, I have a list of basically 5 movies that from the year that I'm still kind of burning to see, and that's definitely one of them. This past, I would say past 4 months, they've just been crammed with great things. Moving out of the festival titles, we had stuff like Blade Runner 2049, which both of us really, really liked.
Yeah.
And we've gone in depth on that.
Oh, also, there's one more film I forgot to mention from VIFF that I saw.
Oh, really?
The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was a weird one because it was opening in festivals all across the calendar. It didn't have one kind of big opening. But yeah, I saw it after, and it was, I totally agree with you.
It's a strange film, but it's super effective. It made you feel things that you weren't sure you could feel because it's part drama, part black comedy, part horror. And Barry Keoghan gives one of the most creepy performances ever. And Colin Farrell's this deadpan character that kind of is supposed to be humorous, but at the same time also dim-witted and a really despicable person because he thinks so highly of himself and so lowly of others.
Yeah, and he has these weird sort of a sexual deviancy with regard to his
with Nicole Kidman, yes.
Well, yeah, and the fact that he seems to get a bit of a thrill out of anesthetize people,
right?
And the movie is packed with all kinds of really disturbing details. Some of them are only referenced once or twice. Other ones kind of weave their way throughout the movie.
Yeah, it's got a weird plot, and it's based on the Greek mythology about how this father has to sacrifice his kid in order to have certain god's blessing for a war that's coming.
Yes, yeah, the whole Agamemnon preparing to go to Troy, yeah.
Yeah, so it took me a while to kind of draw that connection, but once it's there, you really realize what he's trying to go for.
Right, yeah.
Did you see Coco?
I did. Also very, very strong. I mean, Pixar is, after maybe a couple of less than successful entries.
Inside Out was fantastic.
No, I'm thinking of like Finding Dory and Cars 3.
Oh, that's because they're sequels.
So Coco comes out and, it's... I would say like maybe in the first 45 minutes or so, I wasn't entirely sure
right
where I was going to land on it.
Right.
But I don't know. It was this kind of the sum total of the way the music or the idea of music itself is woven so carefully through the entire movie, and it's so linked to the emotional value of the movie. When they're building up to like the final denouement, essentially, you're like it hits you hard, and you're just like, it's like the opening of Up, almost not quite that hard hitting, but it's kind of in that territory in terms of how it hits the or pulls the heartstrings. So yeah, I highly recommend that. Thor Ragnarok is also around that same time. Again, we've talked about it in earlier episodes, so we won't go super into detail. But again, super satisfying Marvel.
Because it was similar to Homecoming in the sense that it didn't really take itself too seriously.
Yes, this is the trick, right? I mean, newsflash to DC, it's not enough to just crack jokes. The jokes have to feel organic and of a piece with the larger film, and
or at least in tone with the rest of the movie. Because Justice League was two-faced.
Yeah, totally. It really, you could really feel how they were grafting the humor in. Allegedly after the fact, if the reports from the reshoots were to be believed. But in Thor Ragnarok, it felt like a single...
It was a Taika Waititi experience.
Yes, and especially if anybody has seen the behind-the-scenes reel that Marvel published in step with the release of the Blu-ray, I mean... to see Taika Waititi like fooling around on set and dancing constantly and just creating this really fun atmosphere for the actors and the crew, I mean... that goes a long way to understanding how a movie like Thor Ragnarok can end up being so satisfying to the audience, because it's just so cohesive. They came at it with a singular approach, and they were just like, how can we take these weirdly disparate characters like an Incredible Hulk stuck on a distant planet and a Thor who in past movies has been a bit of a hothead and not that fun to watch. How can we kind of blend this all together into a really fun, weird experience? And Thor Ragnarok was that.
Yeah, by the way, I know she doesn't qualify because it's like not a performance the Academy Awards ever look for, but I really loved Cate Blanchett's performance as Hela.
Oh yeah, me too.
She was awesome.
It's such a vamping, like over the top, but yet somehow successful. Like so many other actors would have kind of tanked that, I think.
Yeah, but it's Cate Blanchett, so she can do whatever she wants. You know what wasn't amazing, which kind of disappointed me, was Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I was.
It was a very generic.
Yeah, kind of lukewarm
film
on that one. And speaking as like a fan of the Poirot mysteries with David Suchet, the TV show on from. The British TV show, I had a little bit more invested in it as well. But I mean, and now it's emerged since that movie came out, the new one came out, but they're very clearly making a play for a Hercule Poirot cinematic universe. So they want to, there's some hints dropped in the final scene where they essentially say that the next Agatha Christie one that they're going to be doing will be Death on the Nile. Well, we can look forward to more Kenneth Branagh with his ridiculous mustache.
Lady Bird,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Again, one of my favorites from TIFF. Still kind of
top 5 this year.
Ooh, it's up there.
You don't think it's not like a clear cut favorite film of 2017 for you?
I mean, it's up there with like I hate doing the final rankings, but Lady Bird, Shape of Water, Blade Runner 2049. Those are all kind of jostling for position.
Mm-hmm. By the way, what's with this backlash against Lady Bird?
What kind of backlash? What are you hearing?
I keep hearing about backlash against Lady Bird, but I don't know. Like how somehow Greta Gerwig didn't really direct or write the whole thing.
Oh, I didn't hear any of that.
Oh, because it is some crazy rumor about how like it felt really like a Noah Baumbach film, and how he had a lot of help behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, like, she's dating the guy, isn't she? I mean, they're partners,
Right.
But
that's the backlash. I mean, like when it first came out, it was like everyone kind of had this at the top of the list. Like it broke Rotten Tomatoes records. Everyone's like, "Wow, this is gonna be a front runner for awards." Now I'm getting a feeling that people are kind of scaling back on their comments.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good film. I think Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf are going to get nominated. I don't know if they're going to win, but they definitely carry this film, and it's very good. It's very well done.
Yeah, and the whole mother-daughter relationship is so strong in it. I mean, it's hard to find similar movies that go that in depth with that particular kind of relationship between a teenager growing up in that time period in that place. And
well, there have always been attempts, but
there have been attempts, but like something that's specific to like growing up in Sacramento in the 2000s, with those songs on the radio and that specific like income bracket and all of the great observational details about like, throwaway lines like Laurie Metcalf saying, "Oh, we're gonna have a small Christmas this year because we can't really afford like better gifts," or their favorite activity on Sundays is to go touring open houses at fancy homes that are for sale, and like living vicariously through the wealth that they don't themselves have. There's actually there's a great breakdown on the blog One Perfect Shot, which does call outs on Twitter about like great examples of cinematography. One of their writers did a side-by-side comparison of all of Greta Gerwig's most notable movies so far, including Frances Ha, where she kind of broke out. That was a Noah Baumbach film. A second Noah Baumbach film where she was sort of like, she was a writer and kind of a co-star, Mistress America, which I really liked. And then, of course, Lady Bird. And there's I think I shared it on Twitter. It's a very detailed kind of look at how Greta Gerwig started out as primarily an actress and then started taking on more of a writing side of things, and has now moved away from the camera entirely and is just writing and directing. And it's a great kind of progression of a career that's kind of only getting started.
Mm-hmm. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Super great. If you like Martin McDonagh...
There's a backlash for that too, by the way.
Welcome to 2018. There's backlash against everything.
I know, right?
I mean, is it so hard to just enjoy things nowadays? We have to like second guess ourselves and,
Yes.
So yeah, ignore the backlash. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is... Not only is it very satisfying for fans of Martin McDonagh, people who liked In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths... it hits a lot of those same kind of black comedy notes, but the film programmer who actually came out to talk about the movie before the screening at TIFF this year that I went to said that one of the crucial ideas to understand about 3 Billboards is the element of compassion that's in it, and how the characters wrestle with how much compassion that they can really give other characters, given the kind of wretched situation that they all find themselves in with this rape and murder that's happened in this small town, and the sheriff's department's inability to solve it, or their unwillingness to solve it. But yet the characters actually show weird forms of compassion towards each other as much as they can, and they actually forgive each other in ways that we haven't really seen in a Martin McDonagh film. So it's very interesting on all those levels.
Did you ever see Wonder?
No, it's
not really my type.
It felt like an awards grubbing type of thing, or just kind of a tearjerker.
I've heard good things though, eh?
I mean, I'm sure it's
Darkest Hour.
Haven't seen it yet. That's on that top 5 list I mentioned.
I do want to talk about this film with you. Call Me by Your Name.
Okay, have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Okay.
I would say between this and The Florida Project, these are 2 of my top 5. A lot of people had kind of compared Call Me by Your Name to Moonlight from last year, but to me, The Florida Project is a closer comparison.
Yeah, and in terms of like physical location and all that.
Well, that and just like the way it's shot, the story it tells. Call Me by Your Name reminds me a lot of Brokeback Mountain.
Oh yeah, okay.
Although I do think Brokeback Mountain is a far superior film.
Huh.
Call Me by Your Name is completely, to me, dependent on Timothy.
I don't know. I've never heard it said out loud.
Timothée Chalamet's performance, which I think was a lot better than I thought. That last scene where he gets the final phone call from Armie Hammer's character and he's looking in the fireplace and the credits are rolling and there's just music in the background.
Yeah.
You could see every emotion across his face. That was a wonderful piece of acting. The thing about Call Me By Your Name was that, unlike Brokeback Mountain, I never felt, and unlike Moonlight, I never felt pulled in by their story. I think with Moonlight, there was always that intrigue about, like, is he or isn't he? With Brokeback Mountain, there's really undertones of, like, homophobia and like a forbidden love. With Call Me By Your Name, it was very sensual, but at the same time, I think it was more about first love than being attracted to your own gender.
Yeah, I sort of see what you're getting at. I mean, I think
Call Me By Your Name is more of a coming of age story.
A little bit, yeah. I think also part of what's key to enjoying Call Me By Your Name is how interwoven it is, how interwoven it is with all of the classical influences that are kind of surrounding the characters. So like,
right, it's very romantic.
They're living in this kind of estate home in Italy. They're surrounded by classical music. All the characters are knowledgeable about classical music, about classical authors,
the arts.
About the arts, the archaeology of the place around them, the history.
They get homemade pasta. They get juice from their own backyard with the apricot trees.
Yeah, it's almost as though like the world doesn't exist outside of the little town where they're hanging out for the summer.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way of putting it, because I feel like that's where it kind of lost me.
Okay.
That it was very encased in its own world, whereas Moonlight and Brokeback Mountain to me were about people struggling to find their place in society.
Yeah. So yeah, they're sort of mirror films in that way, like Call Me By Your Name is less interested in the world at large. It's all about the senses and the what those evoke in the characters. But one thing I did like about Call Me By Your Name is it didn't really seek to put labels on any of the things that the characters were experiencing. Like, you can certainly see that, the relationship between Timothée Chalamet's character and Armie Hammer's character is it's a gay relationship, but he seems to derive just as much pleasure from a relationship with a local girl from the village.
Yeah. Well, even his at the end of the scene, there's a monologue from his dad, who's played by Michael Stolbarg.
Yep.
Who's like a really underrated actor who's really good. He's in a lot of things that you'll be like, oh, that's him.
Yeah.
He has this monologue and he really sums up the film really nicely, because up to that point, it really took a while to get going, I think. Everything that happened in front of it was a little slow moving. Like, you knew what was going to happen, but you just didn't quite know when.
Yeah.
And you see Timothée Chalamet like go through all these ups and downs. The part where he's playing with the peach, I thought that was very both hilarious and kind of heartwarming and touching and sensual at the same time. But that also was what, an hour and a half into the movie? Yeah.
So I mean, can I really put it in my top 5 of the year? Maybe not. So I know some people certainly have.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not my favorite, but it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, I would put it in like maybe the top 10 for me. Maybe it's like the 6th or 7th place, just purely based on its level of achievement with performances and with cinematography and music selection. All of those boxes are being ticked.
This was a film that I thought would be an awards frontrunner, and in some ways it is, but it hasn't separated itself from the pack like I thought it would.
I'd be surprised to see it grab something like Best Director, because it seems to be a film where the achievement is mostly in the acting, maybe in cinematography.
Yeah, if anything, if it wins anything, I would expect to pick up an award in like Best Adapted Screenplay or Best Actor and Best Musical Score or something like that.
Yeah, it won't sweep the awards. So
no.
Which I'm also totally fine with.
Yeah. So between this and Moonlight, I much prefer Moonlight. I think Moonlight's a far stronger film.
Yeah, it's interesting though.
And then Brokeback Mountain too. I think that's a very strong film too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would, given the choice between Moonlight and this one, I would probably rewatch this one again first. Maybe it's because I more closely relate to that kind of the
What do you relate to, Rob?
I relate to like the classical experience, or the classical history and the music side of it. You know, I mean that's those kind of topics were kind of how I grew up. So
right. I relate more to like the kind of loneliness that Brokeback Mountain and Moonlight has. And Moonlight, you know how it has those parts where it has like clothes just like flying on a clothesline when it's drying under the hot sun?
Yeah.
That reminds me of where I grew up in Taiwan too. Like,
oh yeah. Okay.
So that imagery, and it's about minorities too. So that kind of, I don't know, speaks more to me. I've never had like a summer vacation where I've like lived in a villa or like plucked fruit from the backyard and eaten it.
Well, I mean, neither have I, but I mean, it's
that to me is just like a more distant world to me. So
right.
Yeah. But the one film that I think is completely overrated is The Disaster Artist.
Oh no.
Because I think if you don't know what The Room is, it's a pretty flat film.
Yes, I mean and I think at the time I saw it, and I think I might have said this in my review because I wrote it not long after I saw it for the first time. At the time, I sort of believed that The Room works just fine whether you're familiar with the background or not. But the more I've kind of followed Tommy Wiseau's kind of weird resurgence and how it's suddenly cool to be a fan of The Room and how he's been, you know, popping up at awards shows and getting the kind of superstar life that he always dreamed of by proxy through being portrayed by James Franco, the more I kind of believe that The Disaster Artist, the amount you enjoy it is directly connected to how much you're following this kind of weird second career that Wiseau has had, and like all of the weird little side projects. The more you know about like his upcoming movie with Greg Sestero, or his weird TV show, or all the strange quotes that he's given to the press, like if you stay on top of all that stuff, you'll probably enjoy The Disaster Artist a lot more, because you kind of feel like it's a movie that's made for fans of Tommy Wiseau or people who are, I don't know, perversely interested in Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah. It's like watching a sequel when you have to watch the first film first.
That's a pretty good way to put it, actually.
Yeah, there's certain parts in the Disaster Artist that you couldn't quite get as much as if you had already seen The Room or know the story behind it.
Right, yeah.
So that was my one gripe, and I think James Franco's performance was fine. I don't think it was extraordinary.
No, but I mean he's kind of operating, and we might get into this when the nominations are released, and we talk about that on the next episode. But it sounds like he's going to get a nomination for Best Actor for this one.
It's a tough category this year.
It's a tough category, but you know, a lot of people have been interviewed now. In the wake of maybe the allegations that some of us always thought were going to come with regard to James Franco. Mm-hmm. You know, he's been accused of sexual exploitation of some of his younger cast members, you know, that he's put in some of his indie projects, theater shows and stuff like that. So a lot of people who voted for him to be nominated at the Oscars are now wishing they've gone on the record and they've said that they wish they could take their votes back, which you can't do, incidentally. And so it's possible that he'll get that nomination, but then he won't actually get any votes when they go to choose the winner, because he'll kind of be that kind of sticking out like a sore thumb, essentially, you know, with the nomination. But
you know what bothers me most about that story?
Which one? The allegations against him?
No, the people pulling their votes for Franco. The same people have probably been voting for Woody Allen and freaking Roman Polanski for years.
Yeah, totally.
And it's so hypocritical. Like, yeah, because not pulling away or taking away my vote and trashing on James Franco is like in vogue today, when clearly you've had multiple chances to make the same sort of political stance years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So that really bothers me. When people say that, I'm just like, you're so full of fucking shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, totally. It's, I mean, it might sound strong, but yeah, I agree with you. There's a reason why this is all kind of unzipping. Well, that's a bad pun. Bad.
Yeah, that's not good.
Ignore that.
Unraveling.
there's
That should stay in the pod because that's funny. That's really funny.
But there's a reason why it's all kind of coming apart right now, because there's a lot of pent up. There's been a lot of stuff hidden. There's a lot of stuff where people have been complicit, and then it all kind of comes apart all at once. And
yeah, people just making half-assed apologies when they don't mean it, when they've had numerous chances to make a difference, but they don't. But they only choose now because it's convenient for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to The Shape of Water, which I think is one of the best original films of the year.
Oh, did you catch that one as well?
I did see it. Sally Hawkins was great. Michael Shannon's great as always as Michael Shannon. Was kind of thrown off by the fact that Doug Jones's character in this film is very much like Abe Sapien in Hellboy.
Yeah, that's true.
The art design, the set design, Sally Hawkins' performance was incredible. I thought it was very much, as Guillermo del Toro said, a fairy tale for adults.
Yes.
It is not really a kid's film. No. There's nudity and violence in it. Michael Stolberg's in this film. Stolberg is in this film as well. He's great. Octavia Spencer is great as well. The music is fantastic.
Yes.
It's a very sensual fairy tale, and it makes you feel all sorts of things, because at first it's a very bizarre story, but at the end you start rooting for these characters.
Absolutely, yeah. It is really like a genre bending kind of thing, and it's hard to classify, but that's really where Del Toro is at his best. He's this
Pan's Labyrinth.
He's able to synthesize genres that might be otherwise like running on completely different tracks, and he kind of makes it feel like like they were meant to be together. And I think a lot of that comes from how knowledgeable he is about all of the influences that are out there to put into something. When he goes after a particular author or artist or something, he knows everything about them. He almost applies like a classic geek's obsession with something to topics that haven't really gotten a geeky subculture to them. And and he pours all of that into this movie.
Top 3 film for you?
Top 3 for sure. That and Lady Bird, I think, definitely vying for position there. I wouldn't be surprised if it kind of goes a bit of the similar direction as the Golden Globes, where maybe Del Toro picks up Best Director for this one.
I think he's got it in the bag, to be honest.
But it doesn't get Best Picture,
no, it won't.
So maybe Best Picture will go elsewhere.
Yeah. It's going to be that year where Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Screenplay go to all 3 different winners, I think.
Yeah. Which, I kind of like that, though. It's, it spreads the love around a bit.
Yeah, but it also tells you, like, how, like, no film is really knocked it out of the park or like stood out.
Does it though? I mean, isn't it enough that we can have a couple of 100%?
No. I mean relative to other films. Like there's no clear cut front runner.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like for me, last year, Moonlight and Manchester by the Sea were just like a cut above everyone else. This year, it feels like there's like 10, 15 films that are kind of in that conversation.
Yeah, I actually agree with that.
Yeah. I also saw I, Tonya, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Margot Robbie's performance and everyone's performance in this were fantastic. Between this and Molly's Game, both movies that really feature strong female characters that went from basically nothing to something, I think. And
then, well, nothing to something, then nothing again.
Right, and then somehow redeem themselves in the end in their own personal sort of viewpoint.
Yeah.
I think I liked I, Tonya a little bit more.
Than Molly's Game?
Than Molly's Game, yeah. I think when Molly's Game, with Aaron Sorkin, you know what you're getting. And he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
But
it is very much an Aaron Sorkin movie.
Yeah. But I feel like when you're using like graphics on the screen and drawing stuff out and explaining things clearly, I feel like you're really taking something away from the flow of the story. So for I, Tonya, even though it was kind of like parts of it were in a mockumentary style, I think I liked the progression a bit more. I think it felt more of a natural movie to me than kind of like a documentary, which Molly's Game felt like sometimes.
Yeah. There was a sense in which that like I, Tonya was down in the dirt, living the story at the same speed as the real life people, but Molly's Game had a more kind of elevated, kind of observational sort of, not even observational, but like it was kind of looking down from a high place on everything. Yeah.
I think I, Tonya did a better job of showing or telling you the story by showing than Molly's Game. But I thoroughly enjoyed both films. I just I think I, Tonya was a slightly stronger film in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, it's hard because I mean I do really like some of the I tend to respond well to Sorkin's wordiness and his.
Yeah, me too. He's sharp. It's fast.
Yeah, it kind of it keeps you interested. He works with some really interesting actors, and his speeches, you know, I mean, it's easy to get really transfixed by the speeches that his characters delivers, whether it's you know, the monologues being done by Jessica Chastain in the voiceover, or Idris Elba's monologue as the lawyer in one of those deposition scenes is one for the ages. So I'm a little bit torn on it. I don't really know which one I prefer of the two of those.
Which performance did you prefer, Chastain or Robbie?
I think I preferred. Okay, well, let's say it this way. I preferred.
They're both going to be up for the awards, I think.
Yes, I preferred Robbie's performance, but I preferred as a entire movie Molly's Game.
Well, Jessica Chastain had to carry that movie, right?
Yes, but I feel like,
and she really did.
The thing I liked the most about I, Tonya was Robbie's performance. That was the reason I went. Whereas with
and Allison Janney too, right?
Yeah, but definitely Robbie. And then in the case of Molly's Game, in that case, it was less about the core performance and more about the whole package.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Robbie's performance was more impressive to me. As much as I love Jessica Chastain, yeah.
They're going up with Saoirse Ronan for the awards. So
and Sally Hawkins.
Yeah, and Sally Hawkins. So
that's a tough four-headed race. Although I do think Saoirse Ronan and Sally Hawkins probably have the slight edge.
Maybe a bit.
But between those two and Frances McDormand, I don't know. Any of those three could win, and I'd be okay.
McDormand is, at this point, unless the precursor awards prove me wrong, I feel like McDormand, because she already won for Fargo, that'll hurt her chances a little bit. Even though I know you prefer it when it's all kind of an even playing field and previous wins don't.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like how we should give this person an award or not give it to because of past history.
Sure. But yeah, unfortunately, it seems like time bears it out. It's very rare for people to do repeat performances in their career, or repeat wins in their career.
Do you think Meryl Streep will get nominated?
I sort of hope she doesn't, because she eats up.
She's going to have to push someone out, right? And that someone could be more deserving.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I get it. She is one of the best actresses of her generation, if not of all time. But everyone knows it by this point, and every time she gets nominated, she edges out somebody who, case of last year, Amy Adams in Arrival.
Yes.
She edges someone out who really deserves it. And, and then, you get back into the whole conversation of do they deserve to win if they haven't won before, or is there, which is, it's a complicated argument. But yeah, I mean, personally, I think Meryl Streep has been awarded many, many times in her career. And I think she herself feels that way as well. She doesn't want to.
Yeah, she makes jokes about it herself.
Yeah, exactly. Here's hoping that it does kind of follow that category of Saoirse Ronan, Margot Robbie, Jessica Chastain, Frances McDormand, and Sally Hawkins. But yeah, we only have to wait another week or two to find out.
The Post, did you see that?
No. So
that feels like Spotlight to me. I feel like because it kind of swept the the National Film Review Board awards. I think Tom Hanks won Best Actor, Meryl Streep won Best Actress, and I think The Post was named Best Film.
But do you think the audience there was a little bit more receptive to a journalism award because they themselves are journalists?
Of course. But I feel like this is the year where the voters are going to be split between so many other films that The Post could sneak in.
It might, yeah.
And win. And it has kind of a Spotlight vibe to it.
Yeah.
When Spotlight won. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I haven't seen The Post, but I can already tell you what to expect from it. That's the kind of film it is.
Yeah, it is definitely, it definitely strikes me as a kind of Spotlight style. I mean, Spotlight did win Best Picture the year it came out. By no means am I not excited to see it. I would say, well, yeah, it's for me right now. The five that I really need to see before the Oscars will be The Post, Phantom Thread, Darkest Hour, Florida Project, and maybe Wind River, but I'm not entirely sure. But there's five there that I really need to see.
So I need to see Phantom Thread, All the Money in the World, and maybe The Post. We'll see.
Are you going to try to see All the Money in the World just to prep for the Oscars, or just because you like Ridley Scott?
Both.
I don't think it's going to perform well in the awards.
No, and I like Christopher Plummer. I think replacing him over Kevin Spacey was a smart choice, because Christopher Plummer to me gives me more of a Getty vibe than Spacey ever would.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, and I've heard really good things about his performance, considering he had zero time to prepare for it. Yeah, and I'm generally interested in the story. I think it's something that, it's a story that deserved to be told. It had previously been done in like plenty of documentaries and stuff. But yeah, for my money, just the fact that Ridley Scott responded in the way that he did and kind of saved the movie from what could have been like financial doom, essentially, by keeping Spacey in the final cut. That speaks to Scott's like resourcefulness and his grit and everything more than most directors.
I have one more film to recommend or talk about, and that's Coconada's Columbus.
Oh, okay. I haven't. Oh, yes. Yeah, because you mentioned this when you saw it at VIFF.
Yes. So I saw this film at VIFF, and people were giving it fantastic reviews. I walked in really excited to see what was going on, because I think Haley Lou Richardson's a really good actress. It had a very interesting story. It had John Cho in the lead. It had sort of like an interracial relationship, even though they were just friends in the film, that I thought was very interesting. I walked out kind of disappointed because it didn't say much of anything. There's a half-baked thesis about having balance in your life, and we all know that. But I feel like it never really goes anywhere. It kind of sticks in one spot and kind of circles around it, but it never really gets to the meat of the issue. And it really depended on like the performances of the actors, which were fantastic. But also, Coconada's directing style is more about visual imagery than trying to tell a story visually. I think there's some interesting shots in there, but it doesn't necessarily further the storyline. I think he has shots in there that only because it looks nice. And the other movie we should touch on last is Star Wars.
Well, yeah, I mean, we we devoted an entire episode to that in the previous episode, but yeah, obviously, Star Wars, giant behemoth of a movie with inspiring a behemoth of a conversation as well. I feel like we're still talking about,
yes,
like not only are the complainants and the whiners still going on about it, but we're still talking about the complainants and the whiners. Yeah, even it was even news when they finally released like a high-res version of the Luke Skywalker brushing the dirt off his shoulder gif. People were retweeting the hell out of that. I'm like, I mean, it's not enough for Star Wars to conquer every single aspect of our democracy, but he's taking over all the gifs as well.
We've had a really good year. Shockingly.
And so are you going on the record and saying that we had a good year? Because I don't think I've ever heard you say that in like 4 years of movie watching.
Yes.
Okay.
I am going on record as saying this is a good year. This has been
2017 is a good year. All right.
Yeah, this has been a really good year. Yeah. Can't say that about other years.
Well, yeah, I beg to differ. I always find some optimism in the.
Yeah, in every year there's always like 3 or 4 really outstanding films. This year I felt like there were at least 10 films that were really worth watching.
Yeah. And that's us just talking, before we've even seen some of the really big ones on our list, like Phantom Thread or The Post, or there's still a few left to see. So
I get the sequel fatigue and the blockbuster fatigue. We're like kind of like an upswing in terms of like the number of quality films per year. Sometimes there's years that like are fantastic, and then they go through a little lull, and then it picks up again. I think we're at the part where like everything's gonna pick up again.
Yeah. And well, I have to say too that, a few people have pointed out that with the death of the Weinstein Company, it's apparently being sold now for like basically pennies. We're losing a major producer of independent cinema, one of the holdouts against the sequel-driven Hollywood machine. But, there's a lot of companies stepping up to fill that void. You've got Annapurna, A24, STX. All of them are making some pretty big gambles with pretty risque stuff. So Whereas the Weinstein Company definitely was a bit of a titan for a while in promoting movies that wouldn't otherwise get a wide release. There's still a way to cure the sequel fatigue if you want to seek it out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think that does it.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to this mammoth-sized retrospective of all the movies of 2017. We only touched on maybe 30 or 35 of the top ones, but obviously there was many more on top of that. So be sure to let us know which ones we missed, which ones you'd like to hear us talk about, and stay tuned for our continuing coverage of the awards season. The next episode, we'll definitely be talking about revelations of the Oscar nominations, what to make out of that.
And we'll make our picks.
Yes, we will officially go on record. I am more nervous about that than Jason is, but
that's because I don't care.
I know.
I'm just going to go for the ones that I think I like.
Yes, so we'll get into all of that in the next episode. But until then, from Toronto, my name is Robert Snow.
And from Vancouver, I'm Jason Chen. Thanks for listening. Please check out kinetoscope.ca for our latest written reviews and follow us on Twitter. We'll talk to you next time.